Hi, my name is Sienna Stone, and this is my final project for FRLT 7130. My first objective for this final project is behaviorism concepts. So, a reinforcement is the act of following a desired or undesired act with a response. The response that you would use for a negative is called a reinforcer. The response is meant to increase or decrease the behaviors. Reinforcement could pose as positive or negative. A positive reinforcement is the introduction of a reinforcer that is desired by the subject. A positive reinforcement example could be allowing students to walk outside after lunch if they've chosen to follow hallway procedures. A negative reinforcement is the removal of something that is undesired based on behavior. So if students are particularly rowdy, most teachers will attempt to correct that behavior with the sitting chart. Sitting charts is seen by most students as a negative consequence for behavior. So if the students act properly, we could remove that seating chart, and that serves as a negative reinforcement. We're taking away something that is undesired. When deciding on your reinforcement, you also have to decide the schedule that you want to use for this. So you can use a fixed reinforcement schedule, and this involves only providing a reinforcer after a specified number of desired responses have been observed. With the fixed ratio reinforcement schedule, the reinforcer is presented only after a constant number of desired responses have occurred. You can use this strategy at the beginning of the year to help students become more familiar with consistency. So an example would be providing students with a positive reinforcement every time they make a 100 on 3 consecutive quizzes, which gives you a 1-to-3 ratio schedule. Objective covers human cognition. So with this one, I'm going to discuss retrieval-based learning and how it increases the speed at which information is accessed because it forces the learner to be deliberate and sort through the knowledge in order to determine what is stored and how it fits to the problem at hand. Retrieval-based learning helps us to be more active in learning the information and engaging in the material instead of passively just learning the facts. One retrieval-based learning strategy that is commonly used is the flashcard method. We've been using this for years and years. We use it because it works. This method can be catered to different concepts, contents, and tasks. Students can write term and definition, term and example, problem and solution, cause and effect. Any of these things can help students to retrieve that information rapidly to increase the access to the information. While retrieval-based learning increases the speed at which students can access information, verbalization is a strategy for long-term memory storage. Verbalization involves recounting information through talking or writing. This strategy can evolve to talking to oneself in order to gain understanding or to connect information that is being received. This is a strategy that can be utilized to help students to connect with characters and events in a story. Verbalization can also be used by having students to take on the role of a character and describe how he or she is feeling throughout a particular part and why they feel that way. This also leads into summarization and collecting evidence from the text. So students would have to recount dialogue and events from the text in order to support their inference regarding how the character feels. The students could also write this as a letter to another character where they include the same details and reasoning. My third objective includes the motivation to learn. So with this, we're looking at personal and situational interests. Personal interests are topics or activities that learners are naturally intrigued by. These interests typically guide many decisions and evoke positive feelings, so the learner is naturally more inclined to interact with that content. Situational interests are invoked by something within the environment. So personal interests can be evoked through allowing students by having to have choice board assignments. They have choices in novels, project presentations, and research topics. For situational interests, you could utilize this by presenting students with a controversial conflict in a novel as a classroom opener. Ask students what they would do if they were faced with the issue, and situational interest requires that teachers have a slight flair for the dramatics. So doing things such as decorating a room based on the setting of the text, or starting social studies class by listening to some popular traditional music for that area. So these are things that get students interested in learning something new. Once you have identified the personal or situational interests with the students, you also have to think about what they're expecting to get out of this and what they're expecting to have to put in. So you're looking at the expectancy value theory, which describes the relationship between a learner's expectations for success at a task and if the cost is worth the time needed for completion. This theory covers the question, can I do this task and do I want to do this task? Expectancy covers if the students believe that they can successfully complete the task. Importance is the value that the learner places on the task. Utility covers how the task connects to an aspect of their lives outside of the task. And interest is whether the student is intrigued by the task. Cover costs what the learner may potentially have to relinquish in order to complete the task. So this theory can be used to assess teachers finding a gap in motivation to engage with the content. This can help teachers to begin utilizing trackers in order to motivate students and continue going on. Expectancy can also be addressed by creating an end-of-the-year goal for the students and breaking that single goal into smaller checkpoints. I typically set my students a Lexile growth goal at the beginning of the year, and that goal is broken into 4 smaller goals based on each 9-week grading period, so that students have a higher expectancy of completing the smaller goals. Reading is a high-value skill that will be utilized for the rest of the students' lives, so they know that they'll use it later. And interest can be included by providing reinforcers or providing students with some kind of other incentive. So the cost is broken into smaller increments, and that keeps it from being such a daunting task for our struggling readers. Objective 4 covers the 9 learning events. Event 1 is gaining attention. This is where the instructor will gain the attention of the audience or learners. This activity should be engaging and signifies the beginning of a lesson. This could be a thought-provoking question, a quick write, or a puzzle that needs to be solved. Event number 2 is informing the learners of the objectives. This is where you present the learners with the objectives for the class and the relevance of the objectives. This can be a quick discussion on how the lesson ties back to previous standards or how it will assist them to build new knowledge for the future standards. Event 3 is stimulating recall of prior learning. This is where the instructor will present the learners with an experience that will stimulate background knowledge and prior learning. This can be merged into the second event. So you guys are just going to sit there and go through some of the previous knowledge. Event number 6 elicits performance. So in this event, you would provide students with practice activities that provide immediate feedback. This could be small group activities that complete an objective together. Objective 5 includes social cognitive theory. This is self-efficacy, and self-efficacy refers to a learner's belief about how competent they could potentially be in a particular content or task. Self-efficacy is another topic that can be addressed with the creation of year-end goals that are broken down into smaller and more manageable goals. So telling students that they must go 320 Lexile points by the end of the year could possibly elicit a negative and opposing response. The student could possibly shut down and refuse to engage in any reading interventions because they believe that the goal is just too large. If you inform the students that the growth goal is now 80 points at the end of each 9-week grading period, the student will see that task as lower cost to them with higher expectancy for completion. The second component to social cognitive theory is vicarious learning. Vicarious learning involves learning a response based on the reinforcements or punishments of a model. The vicarious reinforcement is seen when a model is reinforced by conducting a specified behavior, and the observer sees that behavior is reinforced with the desired reinforcer, so they learn the behavior. A vicarious punishment is when an observer witnesses a model being punished for an undesired behavior. The simplest way to implement a vicarious reinforcement is by praising a student who exemplifies a desired action. If you ask the class a question and only one student raises their hand, simply only choose to acknowledge the student who is raising their hand. The students around that student learn that it is desired behavior, and the student that you called on learns that they will be ignored if they choose to behave as the others. So in this one, you see vicarious learning and vicarious punishment. Thank you for viewing my final project. It was created using Adobe Premiere Rush, and the music also came from the same program.